Hey, everybody, welcome to the Multifamily Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Peterson, and we have a wonderful show. I'm all the way back into my favorite happy spot here in Kauai, the Garden Island of Hawaii. And I'm here with my neighbors. We're having a great time. We've done and seen almost everything the island has to offer, and we're just having a wonderful time. And so, work hard, but also play hard as well. So we're up to episode number 54. This is episode number 54, and we're actually going to make this a three-part series called the University Crossings Case Studies. And this is going to be part one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break down detail-wise everything that happened with I did two deals ago. I did a deal called University Crossings, and I really just want to unpack that thing so you guys can really see the inner workings of things that happened well, things that didn't happen so well, things that went wrong, and how we overcame all the things that I think is probably typical in a multifamily transaction. And so, hold on, strap yourself in, and pay attention, because this is actually going to be a really neat series to give a mind opening view of really what happens in deals. Because trust me, it's not always sunsets and palm trees. Things most often don't go perfect, but they usually go to close, right? So we drive these properties to close, but it's not with a little couple bumps along the way. So, so University Crossing. Oh wait, before we do that, I want to make sure I give a shout out for iTunes reviews. So Laura Wells comes and says, "This podcast is for anyone who wants to shorten their learning curve in investing and prevent mistakes along the way. Entertaining too." So Laura, hey, thanks for that wonderful 5-star iTunes review. I love it when you guys take the time, and I know it's a pain in the butt, but I really do love it when you take the time to go to iTunes and leave a review. You leave a comment, good, bad, ugly, I don't care. Just let me know that you're thinking about the podcast, and give us your thoughts. So really appreciate that, Laura. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about University Crossings. Now, University Crossings was a deal that I had got under contract. So let's talk about first, how did I find the deal? And this is very typical how I find most of my deals. It's through broker relationships. Okay, I've talked about broker relationships a lot in this podcast, and it is true on how we operate. So broker relations is the number one way to get quality deals, and some people like to go off market and go directly to sellers. I personally don't. And the reason for that is not when you do it and you go direct with a seller, they don't always want to give you all the data, all the information. And a lot of times when you're working with a listing broker, right, the broker has already gathered the data and from the seller. Now, not always. It's not a perfect world. But in this case, a deal was presented called University Crossings. And, it appeared to be a decent little deal. University Crossing was a 128-bed student housing property located in Columbus, Georgia. And so if you're not familiar with Columbus, Georgia is, if you've ever been to Atlanta, go south and west of Atlanta, and then you're going to land into Columbus, Georgia. And so, this is a student housing property. And so we've actually acquired quite a few student housing deals lately. And it's not that we're just looking for student housing, it's just they've just kind of fell in our lap. And this was the first, or actually this is the second of 3 pretty big student housing deals. And what we loved about University Crossings when we first looked at it, first of all, we looked at the numbers, okay? And what was happening with the numbers was that the current owner was doing a decent job. In fact, he had the property close to 90% occupancy, and financially, it looked like it was pretty stable. And so, right now in this market trend that we're in, we're looking for very stable cash flowing properties we are able to pick up with not a lot of work to be done, and that we can truly make some plays to either increase occupancy or raise rents a little bit. And we looked at this deal and said we could probably do both. Just from the vacancy of 11%, right? And if we can make that 97, there's a bump right there. And if we can raise the rents just even a little bit, that helps a lot. And so that's really what our goal was when we first saw this deal. A couple other things that stuck out to us was we love it when there's a little bit higher than average maintenance. So we know we have a very strict supply chain. We manage our costs when we spend money. We manage it very, very well. And so we really wanted to make sure that this was still that deal. And because we saw from the seller's point of view that they had high expenses, right? And so we saw that as a plus. We also saw that they were starting what's called a RUBS program, a residential utility bill-back system, and but they really hadn't taken that to the full breadth of what it could be, right? Meaning billing back the students for water, sewer, trash, because every student uses a piece of that in its master bill. So we saw that as another opportunity to make some money, and then really, just in like some other critical areas like office admin. They had an office admin of $28,000, and that was really high. We're like, what are they spending on office admin that's $28,000 for the year? Because this is not a big student housing deal, where we would spend about $8,000. So like that's a $20,000 difference roughly. And like their maintenance numbers, they were spending $88,000 a year, and we had budget $51,000. So right out of the gate, just with those two line items, that's a significant amount of money that we saw that was in our paradigm. Like it basically said it was a deal. So once we do so underwriting, the key to finding good deals, right, is you have to kiss a lot of frogs. I've said this a couple times on this podcast, that you just got to be willing to do the work. But this was a referral from a broker, and he knew it was a deal, and he knew it was something that we would be interested in. And then we confirmed and said, yes, it is something we were interested in. Let's do a site visit. Okay, that's the next step. So once we saw that our numbers were working, in fact, that's the third step. We saw the numbers were working. We went back and then did more data analysis. So our numbers worked first. Then we started underwriting the community. And what we saw was there was a regional airport close, I think really close. It's a four-year college, and it's a pretty good size four-year college. And not only that, is that the property was located adjacent to the college, like right across the street. If you cross the street, you are now on college land, okay? That's important. So we started, and then we did some demographic data. Like we like to do crime statistics. We like to do medium household average, and compared from the state to the zip code of the property, right? And I think that's really important because it gives you some demographic, who's in the area, what's the area about, is it growing, is it above average for the state, what's the quality of life index, right? What's your crime index? That crime index is so vitally important, right? Because sometimes some areas you could be in one zip code, totally different crime than the zip code right next to it, and you need to know that. That's important. So we did all that data, and then now it's to the point of, okay, our deal is still penciling, and we have to, we're like, yes, let's go do the deal, okay? And so we go to the property, and we do a site visit. Now, at the site visit, things can, go from good to bad quickly, and a lot of times that has happened. In fact, more often than not, that happens. We go to a site visit, And then we start seeing what you can't see that's not from pictures, right? You start seeing the backside of the properties. You start seeing the surrounding area, what's around the property. Even though you can go on Google Maps, you can't see everything. And once you get on ground, sometimes deals tend to fall apart or they break up. And that's okay. But that really is. And people are like, well, Corey, why would you go to the property? Like, wouldn't you want to put an offer and get the offer accepted before you actually go set foot on the property? And I think that's a real big rookie mistake that I see a lot of investors make, is they're not willing to go visit the dirt. You have to be really willing to visit the dirt. And more importantly, visit the dirt before you actually make an offer. And why is that important? Well, I think it's important because what will happen is brokers understand if you have made the time and effort and money financial commitment to come to a property or not. And so when you do make an offer on a property and you've been on the dirt and you've sent a representative or yourself, now you're coming from way more of a place of authority, and that actually means something. You really want to prove to these brokers that you are part of a conglomerate or a bigger entity. You kind of want to puff your entity that it's just not just you, it's you and all your organization. And so as an organization, you don't want to you want to have a good rep in the community. In other words, we come visit every site that works because we do have an underwriting process. Now, even if it's just using my cash flow calculator, right, that's still an underwriting process, and it's really how you position it in front of the broker that the broker will start believing you and trusting you, and really, he'll be paying attention. And that's 90% of the game, is to get brokers to know, like, and trust you, and to be part of your team. So we go to this property, and things are going pretty well. It was currently right on the bubble of 89 to 90% occupancy. Now, why is that important? Because that's important for financing. Okay, so as we're at our site visit, we're trying to kind of take a look at the numbers, and we realize that we are really close, and we'll probably have a really good opportunity to get permanent financing with Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, right? Now, why is that important? Freddie and Fannie are the best agency loans. They, in my opinion, have the best rules and procedures, and the way it's the best financing you can get. Okay, especially if you're looking for a 10 or 15-year note, they give you a way to be able to get a second mortgage. They allow you to cash out certain ways and apply what's called a supplemental loan. There's lots of ways to take out, and you lock in rates for a pretty good long time, for a pretty good long period of time, and usually have what's called a step down. And what a step down is like the fee if you want to get out of the loan. Okay, so with most loans, like a CMBS loan, let's say you did a 10-year note and you wanted to sell it in year 5. Well, you would have to pay 5 years left of all the interest that would be in that note. You'd have to pay it up front to cash out of that commercial note. That's like highway robbery. So with Freddie and Fannie, they have these step downs where it'll go 5%, 7%, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1. And then there's only a 1% exit fee if you sell. Well, that's a hell of a lot better than a $400,000 or $500,000 fee just for the interest of the property. So that made a lot of sense. So we're looking at Freddie and Fannie, and at the site visit, we really didn't find anything majorly wrong. In fact, we came back from the site visit pretty pleased. In fact, knowing what we know, knowing that we are good at really fixing two things. One is deferred maintenance, and the other one was filling occupancy. We're really good at finding occupancy. So we looked at this property, and we said, gosh, Two of the buildings are super new, like built in 2006, and then one building is super old. And so our thought process is, listen, we don't really need to do too much on the newer buildings because they're actually really good shape. The play here for this property was to update the old property, update the interiors of the old property. That's really all that needs to be done to really be able to, because there's a tenant base that wants to rent our property. So we're like, boom, that makes sense. That's easy. And then can we do it and how much does it cost? And so that was really what the site visit was trying to determine is, are we, what is our actual CapEx budget? And we do a CapEx budget per door. So you want to make sure that you're doing a per door look at CapEx, okay? So we determined that, and I think, let me just look, I'm gonna do a little research here into my model. I believe we determined it was needed, $224,000. So we underwrote the deal. We said, hey, listen, this property needs roughly $3,500 per door of CapEx, that's rehab money, by the way, to fix up this project and to make basically the old building look new and fresh. So that's, all right, so now we have a game plan. And so now we come back from the site visit. Now it's time to try to win the bid. Now there's a call for offers on the property. And that is typically the case on a lot of deals that we buy. It is open market and there's more than one buying group looking at it. And so this has been really our, how we tend to get deals more often than not is the way we stack our deals and leverage our deals to the broker. So when we submit an offer, we have an LOI packet, letter of intent packet, and what's in that packet is a couple things. A is our LOI, and it's just a 2-page LOI. It's not very complicated language. Okay, we save that for the purchase and sell agreement, but the LOI needs to be very clear and cut and not long, right? It can't be that intimidating. And so in our LOI, we have our standard, here's all the items that we are requesting in due diligence. Here's the price, and we usually always do a 45-day or a 30 business day, which is actually 45 calendar days, 30 business days inspection period, and a 30 business day close. Meaning, once you go through your inspection, you have another, so that's 90 days. And then, now here's what we don't put in that LOI, is our extension. We save that for the purchase and sell agreement. So in the purchase and sell agreement, we will then include a provision for usually around $25,000 that we can extend the contract for a certain amount of money. And usually it's another 30 calendar days. So now that puts us to 120 calendar days. That's a pretty good amount of time. That's typically 3 to 4 months of time to buy the property. And that actually is a lot. That is a whole lot. And it works, right? So there's the LOI and all the stuff that we put in there. Then we put our management credibility kit, right? So whatever management company you're using, usually a management company will have their credibility kit, or basically who they are, what they've done, how many properties they've managed, basically saying, here is my management company, I already have it, I'm not looking for it, I have all my ducks in a row, right? Then your credibility kit, you need to prove what you've done. And then a proof of funds, right? And so if you don't have a proof of funds, go get a proof of funds. And you need to submit the proof of funds with everything. So that's a complete packet. But what's more important is how you ask. Okay, now we will typically not submit our LOI until the day of that it's due. In other words, so if it was due on a Friday, we're going to call the broker Friday morning and listen up, pay attention, because here comes some sugar. is you're going to ask for pricing guidance. Now, what is pricing guidance? Okay, well, it's what you're going to ask the broker when you're face to face with them, saying, "Hey, listen, I really like this deal." Now, what you're asking for guidance on this one, because it's just a call for offers, and what you're really trying to do is get invited to the best and final. Best and final is like there's usually 2 rounds in a commercial deal. You have call for offers and then best and final. And so our conversation goes like this to the broker. Hey, John, listen, we really like this deal and we want to make sure that we get invited to the best and final round. Okay? Our price will be probably a little lower than expected, but we have some dry powder, and really we just want to, our history and everything that we've done, we want to be invited to your best and final round. And so that's really how we play it. And we're looking for some pricing guidance. What is it going to take to at least get into the best and final round? Okay, we didn't ask them for a number. We just asked them for some guidance. And typically, you might have to play some hot or cold or a couple little things like that to kind of get the broker to buy into what you're doing. He's going to have a fiduciary, and he's not going to give you the number, but he can let you know if you're close. And that's all you need to do is be close, because you're going to get invited to the best and final round. So typically what happens, and what happened in this deal, is that after we submitted our whole package, just the way I explained it, the broker receives it, says, thanks a lot. We wait a whole week, and then finally we get the call. Mr. Peterson, right? You have been invited to the best and final round. And usually they give a list of all this other crap they want to be filled out. Some of it we fill out, some of it we don't, right? We try not to be intimidated by brokers and sending a bunch of useless information. We usually like to say, here's our track record, here's what we've done. We're not going to give this data, right? But here's, we're a good buyer. We've bought before, and kind of really just list our track record. So then usually after the, call for offers, then once you get invited to best and final, they're going to set a best and final date. In other words, your new offers are due next Friday, right? Best and final. So now what do you think we do here? Okay. On that day, again, the day that it's due, we're calling the broker. Now, this one is kind of an art form. How hard do you press the broker to get the price that you need to have to win? And the whole time that we're communicating with the broker, okay, we're trying to figure out what is the hot point of the seller. Is it price, or is it surety of close? Write that down, everybody, in your head. Surety of close. Surety of close is a big deal. Lots of deals get under contract, not all of them close. Surety of close, if you can demonstrate the ability to close, and if you have a track record of closing deals that you put under contract, man, you are going to have a pretty good time in getting a deal done, right? That's just the way it is. And so it's important to know where your leverage is. So again, you're going to call you're calling the broker and you're asking for pricing guidance and really, what's the hot buttons, and trying to get him to nail you down a price. So you're going to be competitive. You just want to be, and the way I like to say is, listen, we want to be competitive. Where do you think the property's going to trade? What's a competitive price? Now, they won't always give it. Okay, so sometimes you just got to go on what you think is your best price, and you put it forward. And usually what we'll do, and what we did in this deal, is we increased our offer by a couple $100,000, and then we also increased our earnest money by an extra $100,000. So we initially put up $100,000 earnest money. and then I put an additional $100,000 of earnest money in the deal. Well, that showed that we're serious, right? And it also showed that we come up in our price a little bit. And typically that's what we'll do most of the time is leave $200,000 or $300,000 shy of what we really want to offer, so we can just firm that offer up and then have what we call is more of our surety of close, which is our biggest lever that we offer, is that, hey, listen, when Corey goes under contract, typically Corey closes, unless it is something that has really been not disclosed in the deal and we find something that's a deal killer, right? If we don't find that, then we typically close all the time, right? And so that's really the language that we use, and it's worked really well for us. So we submit our deal. We submitted our price for. Let me look at my numbers. We submitted it for five. Well, so here's the thing: the asking price on this property was $5.5 million. That was the asking price. Okay. Now the offer that won the deal was $5,060,000. How cool is that? Asking price, $5.5 million. Offer price, the price that we contracted under, $5,060,000. Okay, and so we had initially put an offer at 4.8. So there we go. That's exactly what we did, and it worked out beautifully. And so now we get a property under contract. Well, no, we have an accepted LOI. And now here's where it gets a little crazy, okay? Is that the seller agrees, but just gives us an agreement via an email, which is really not good. I mean, we want them to sign our LOI, our letter of intent. And the reason we think that's very, very important is if it's not signed, then it's really not saying that they agree to everything. And so, because we are now going to go, and we in our LOI language says that the buyer is responsible for preparing a contract. Why? Because we have legal contracts that are built for us, not for the seller, but built for us. And so that's an important process in making sure that you get a deal done. But the seller didn't sign our LOI. And so we spent a week going through and trying to say, oh, great, well, it's great that you've accepted it, but sign our LOI so we can go to purchase and sales contract. Purchase and sales contract. Purchase and sales contract. And they don't submit. So, and then like almost a week and a half later, the broker or the seller decides to submit their contract to us. Okay. Now this happens, and sometimes it doesn't happen. We try to always mitigate it to where we have our. I'm sorry about the dogs barking in the background. I'm doing it live here in Hawaii, so there's dogs and they're barking. So the seller then goes ahead and submits their PSA or purchase and sales contract, and it's not ours. And this is where things, in a way, kind of like, it starts to be red flags for us, because typically what happens is now the seller is going to try to dictate different language, and it always happens this way. If a seller submits a contract, they never abide by our like. So when we write a contract, we really try to stick exactly with our verbiage and our wording from our PSA, except for a couple items, right? And one of the things that we always add in our purchase and sales contract is, again, that 30-day extension for a price. And typically that's not a big deal, and in this case, it wasn't a big deal to get it added, but what they didn't want to add was all our language in all the things that we requested in our due diligence, meaning we wanted bank statements, we wanted tax records, we wanted everything that it takes to buy a property, because we needed those items. We just flat out need them, okay? and it's part of our process. And if we don't have it, how can we underwrite properly? And so they wanted to leave out a lot of the items, and we said no. And so what normally takes about 2 weeks took about a month and a half for lawyers to get together and redline and finally agree on a document that both the seller and the buyer would accept and sign. Now, that is, I call it par for the course. It seems to happen more often than not, and it's a pain in the butt sometimes when it goes this way, but generally sellers are wanting to sell, and we're saying we're a buyer that wants to buy. And if you have those two things going on, more often than not, you can find a way to agree. And that's what we did, is we found a way to agree. And so I think this is a really good stopping spot for today's segment. So I'm going to ask and invite you to come in to listen to it tomorrow or our next week to learn more about what happened on this deal as on our road to purchase, right? Because we got our contract signed, and then we had things that went wrong. And these are very typical, and you're going to want to know what went wrong and what went right and how we negotiated and how we just kind of managed the whole process. And then the last segment that we're going to do is we're actually going to bring my other partners, Sean Terry and Corey Boatwright, into this and get their take, because they were in the deal with me from the beginning. And it'll be interesting to hear their commentary of this deal and how it played out in their eyes, because they're privy to a lot of the back and forth. Not every piece of it, because I was the one running it from the get go, but they had they got to see what happens in a deal. And they're like, is this typical? Does this usually go on? How come you can't leverage this? How come you can't leverage that? And the goal was just to get to closing. So I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with this series. So tune in next week to listen about our University Crossings case study, episode number 2 for the UVC case study. All right, thanks. And as always, guys, listen. You know me. I'm in here in Hawaii. Hopefully, you're having a good time seeing the background. It is sunsets and palm trees. This trip has been an amazing trip, and here's why it's important: is I made it a promise to myself that I would never let money corrupt me or try to change me. Now, money can change you, by the way, and you've got to be grounded in what you and learn to say no a lot. It's not always fun, but you got to say no a lot. But once you overcome your need for money, in other words, when you have all your basic needs met, a new thing kind of comes in, and it says, what drives you, Corey? What really drives you? And so it's not money anymore. Now, I love to play the game of real estate, and I really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun doing what I do. But money doesn't necessarily drive me as much anymore. What does drive me, though, is what we did here in Hawaii. And I have a new slogan. I got it from Sean McCloskey, and I just love it. And one day he was like, Corey, you want to be the supplier of fun. And that is so true. I wanted to be the supplier. I want to give people experiences. And so on this trip, I was able to bring and pay for this house for all my neighbors to come down. My neighbors paid for their own flights. But I said, guys, if you pay for your flights, I will pay for the whole, the house and everything in it, right? So we can have a nice place to stay right on the beach, and we can spend 1 week together and just have a lot of fun. And that is exactly what we've done. We have had an amazing time, and this is, for them, every one of my neighbors, it is their very first time in Hawaii, and more importantly, Kauai, the Garden Island. And we have just been giving them every day a new experience, and it has been so fun to watch the joy and to show them what I know to be true, that this place is magical, right? Hawaii is a very, very magical place for me. It's one of the few places where I really go and I try to uncharge, uncharge. I try not to work. But I love doing my podcast here because I get so jazzed. I think about the journey that I've taken, and that, I'm actually 2 houses away from Bruce's house. Now, I'm going to own Bruce's house in the next couple years. I'm just saying that. I've said it out loud a couple times, but I'm telling you right now, we have a plan to own Bruce Wayne's house, and in Anahoa in Hawaii. And I think because I want to, it'll complete my story and make me feel, it's a neat road, and to have that. But more importantly, why do I want to buy a house in Hawaii? So, one is I truly believe that I want to be able to be the supplier of fun, and I feel like I can VRBO it to give other people experiences, and hire the right management company. I know it'll already be expensive, right? But I'm okay with the expense of it. But we still come to Hawaii a lot, and we go to different places, and that's a lot of fun too. But I am going to buy a house in Hawaii because I think Shelly and I want to, when our kids about have 4 more years left until they get out of college and out on their own. Now, they'll probably come work for me, hopefully, but if not, it's okay. But we're going to spend the 4 months of hell in Arizona, we're going to spend it here in Hawaii. That's the plan. So, anyways, enough about me. Listen, guys, there's a testament that, 17 years ago, 2 houses away, I saw something that was so real to me. Bruce had the 2 things that I think most of us are longing for, which is time and money. Most of us have one, and very, very few of us have both. And my challenge to you today is to tell yourself today that you are going to be in pursuit of time and money. And in my opinion, the best place to get time and money is in commercial real estate. It is through apartments. And I've grown exponentially wealthy. I have money coming in time and time every month for work that I did once. And it's a magical thing. It's a magical thing. When you cash flow is the new sexy. I promise you that. Okay? It is the new sexy. And, I think about my life of like being a car salesman and all the trials and tribulations and everything that I had to do, and what focus it took. And I have been extremely focused on my goal. Now, the first goal was just real estate. But in 2011, that's when it changed. I knew that it was multifamily. I knew that it was cash flow. And so I've been on a relentless pursuit of that. Here I am living out my dream. And my challenge to you is, now it didn't happen overnight, by the way. Didn't happen overnight. It took me from 2011 to 2017, truly, 2017. In the summer of 2017, when I sold my property and bought my next property, right, and I had like $3 million of my money in the next deal, that's when I was truly set free. So it took roughly 5 years of me watering the dream with one property. Now, I bought 3 or 4 other properties in the process, and I still own them. But it's that one that went all the way to fruition that set me free. So truly, you're one deal away from creating legacy wealth. So my challenge to you is to not be idle, to claim it right now that you're going to be successful in commercial real estate. Because I know if you put it in your mind, you start feeding that dream, and you think about it, you meditate on it, and you start to believe it. When you believe it, you can achieve it, because your paradise is possible.